How many of you are planning to travel for the holidays or have already traveled? Quite a few. Now, what you pack when you travel, it says a lot about you. And if you have multiple people in your family, when you start to pack and you're going on a long road trip, you have to be selective. Because not everybody's stuff is going to fit in the vehicle. Then you got to put on like the back little trailer or put on the topper. And it can get hard to travel with lots of people if you're going a long distance. Now, if we're going to visit family, I can start packing 30 minutes before we're supposed to leave and be good. I just don't need, I am a minimalist when it comes to packing. And I have two goals. One is to pack as little as possible. So I think about the week, I think about clothes that I can rewear, flip inside out. No, I don't do that. But how can I get the minimum amount of clothes into the bag? And then my second goal is that when I get home, if there are items in my bag that are unworn, unused, and clean, and I can put them back in the drawer, oh, glory. I got to practice it last week. We took a 17-hour one-direction road trip to visit family. I came back, and I just want you to know, I'm not only meeting expectations, I am exceeding expectations when it comes to the way I pack. Now, not everybody in my family follows my philosophy. Not everybody. And we're there for 3 days. The amount of shoes required for 3 days, it's different for me. So I'm going to stop right here, because the next road trip I take might be by myself if I continue down this path. But we have different ways of packing and different, it says a little bit about you, what you travel with during the holidays, but clothes aren't the only things we travel with during the holidays. And in fact, we travel with a whole lot of other things. Sometimes we travel with bitterness. That's a little different than clothes, but we travel with bitterness. We travel, and this is just in life in general, we travel with hurts, and we travel with the need to control our lives and the people around us. We travel with unrealized dreams. We travel with too much stuff, and by travel I mean we live. And the holidays can be a heavy time, whether involving actual travel or not, because we have this baggage. And so we're starting a new sermon series called Travel Light. And my hope for this series is that with God's help and the freedom we find in Christ, that we will be able to travel light, or at least live light, or live lighter, travel lighter. And so what are you holding on to as we head into the holiday season? As we get closer to Christmas, are there things that you are carrying that you need to let go? And I don't view these next few weeks as like the end of this conversation, but maybe it's the beginning of the conversation. Maybe for you it's just the realization that you are carrying something, and then the real work begins. What are we carrying? What can we let go of? And so the title of my talk today is Letting Go of Stuff. Letting go of stuff. And my main point right off the bat, here it is. It is better to have less of what doesn't matter and more of what does matter. It's better to have less of what doesn't matter and more of what does matter. We live in a consumeristic culture. We want to accumulate. We want to have just a little bit more. I came across an article from the American Psychological Association, the APA, from 2008, so 15 years ago. And what they found was that they were getting media inquiries, and they regularly do get inquiries from the media to talk about different human behaviors and why people are not necessarily acting the way they are. But what they found when they came to write this article is that their number one inquiry was about Americans and money, and why there was a growing number of Americans who spend more than they have, and going into debt. And so this article was in response to that, and they wanted, what's the psychological reason people are spending so much? And here's what the article said. at one point. It says, anytime the urge strikes, we now have the capability to act on it impulsively. And that creates a much greater challenge for us than was ever the case before. Says psychologist Stuart Weiss, PhD of Going Broke, Why Americans Can't Hold On to Their Money. It's only natural that we're having trouble with debt. And so the article talks about, like, we have the ability to spend money at any time. Impulse buying, like never before in history. And this was 2008. Now, this is before everybody had smartphones. In fact, at this point, it was like around 20% of people had smartphones. Of course, we had the internet, so you could sit down at your computer. But it still required a little bit of work, right, to sit down. But now, Amazon. I already feel it in my back pocket, right? It's like, oh, that's a good idea. That's on sale. Like, it's so easy. It's painless on the front side. It's painless. It's easy to impulse spend. And then the article goes on to say that research shows that credit cards condition us to give in to impulses. And I've seen other studies, like if you have a credit card in cash and you carry cash all the time, or just a credit card all the time, you will spend less with cash because there's some like tangible loss or pain. Like I earned that. And so, but now with everything being a credit card, so easy. You may have seen the headlines, I think it's about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, that credit card debt in the U.S. is now above $1 trillion for consumer credit card debt. So we can impulse buy, and then we are bombarded with this message that tells us to spend. To spend. We see advertisements everywhere. I tried to do some digging on how many advertisements we see, and if you Google it, and I would encourage you to fact check me all the time. It's fine. I'm not offended. But somewhere between 4,000 and 10,000 ads they say we see every day. And when I read that, I was like, no. And I did find some articles with some pushback, but if you talk about like just on the radio and on TV and on the pop-ups, and that just seems like a lot. And even if it's not 4,000, we all have been the victims of searching for something and then it popping up in our feeds, right? Here's what had happened. As I read a news article that said Kim Kardashian was worth $1 billion, not million, $1 billion. I was like, oh, wow, that's a lot of money. So I was curious, so in the article it said she was worth $1 billion because she was part owner of Skims. So I'm reading the article, I'm curious. If you don't know what Skims are, and we're all family here, I didn't either, raise your hand. You don't know what Skims are. Don't know what Skims are, that's fine. That's fine. Don't know what Skims are. I did not either. I Googled, what are Skims? Now, in my feed, it's all shapewear. It's all, I got some on right now. They can't tell, no, I'm joking. That's just, the AI knows, like it's watching. Sometimes we just talk about something. So recently I'm like, I wonder, I want to fact. No, I'm not even going to look that up because I don't want to see the ads. And so I asked somebody else to look it up for me. Like we have these ads and it's all buy it, be happy, spend more. And we believe the lie that what we don't have is what we need. It is I heard someone describe it as the when-then lie. When, then lie. Like, when I have, fill in the blank, then I'll be content. And we're talking about buying things and shopping, but you can fit a whole lot of things into that when, then lie. When I get that career, when I meet that special person, when I finally, then I'll be content. And so we live with this when, then lie. So here's the problem. It's never been easier to spend money. So we got impulse spending. Credit cards are easy, but advertisements, they're numerous, they are effective, and we are not content. We are not content. There comes a point in life where a child, usually it's in middle school, where they go from not having a care in the world, not worrying about what people think about them, to all of a sudden being very self-conscious. Like You may remember that moment for yourself, where like it's just, and I have one child left who hasn't quite got there, where she'll skip and sing and doesn't care. But the time is coming, and we all face that time where all of a sudden that innocence is gone. And all of a sudden we care. We care what people think. I am a child of the 90s, and in the 90s, we had if everyone remembers, the puffer starter jackets. Puffer starter jackets, like that's what you had to have to fit in. I didn't fit in. We didn't have the money for the puffer starter jacket. Also, the Charlotte Hornets, the basketball team, but they came out with like this purple. I got a witness in the back. The Charlotte Hornets, like they had like purple and blue, and everybody wanted it. Now, I did have a Charlotte Hornets hat. And if my pictures were digitized from the 90s, I would have brought a picture. Because I know I got some pictures of that. The other thing in the 90s that I really wanted was a Michael Jordan jersey, number 23. Now, to say I was a fan of Jordan, it's an understatement. Like, I know that he is 60 years old because his birthday is February 17th, 1963. I collected basketball cards, and I still have them in the sleeves. I went to baseball card shows, and like they way overpriced, and I've got like 60 Michael Jordan basketball cards. I've got Wheaties boxes still in my garage. I got posters, him jumping from the free throw line, the iconic slam dunk championship where he scored a 50. I wanted that jersey. So Christmas came around every year. Can I get the Jordan jersey? And I asked for it so much. You know what finally happened? I never got it. My parents, like we didn't have a whole lot of resources. And my parents weren't going to go into debt. They weren't going to spend money that we didn't have. And I'm grateful for that. Though at the time, the only way that I had a Jordan jersey was to borrow my best friend's Jordan jersey and to wear it on occasion and to feel like I was all right, like I was Jordan himself. Every generation has their fads. The 2000s, down by Abercrombie and Fitch, Miss Me, I don't know, Beyonce with the gradient sunglasses, Alicia Keys and her baby fats velour tracksuits. I never wore one of those. The good news is that once we are grown, once we become adults, that thankfully we outgrow that desire to impress. No? Hashtag, that's a lie. That's a lie. We don't outgrow it. We just get better at masking it. And it would be easy to look down at the teenagers and they'd be like, why are you so concerned with what other people think? Why are you? When we're all so very concerned with what other people think. We're so very concerned. We're not much different. We believe the lie, when, then. And we are traveling through life with too much stuff. But it is better to have less of what doesn't matter and more of what does matter. There's a book of wisdom literature in the Old Testament, the book of Ecclesiastes. And the author in the book just sets out to all these things that we do the when, then lie. He goes through success and career and lovers, if, when, then. He goes, and so in Ecclesiastes 4, this is our main text for today. Ecclesiastes 4, verse 4, it says, "And I saw that all toil, all achievement spring from one person's envy of another. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Better is one handful than chasing after the wind." And I love that imagery of chasing after the wind. I don't know if you were a child and you ever tried to chase the wind. Were you successful? Did you ever catch it? Did you ever get to the point where like, okay, I've caught the wind? And what the writer is saying, like, it's better to have one handful and to have some peace, to have some contentment, to be satisfied, than to always be toiling after more. And I just need this. I just need that. Now, other translations say better is one handful than vexation of mind. Better is one handful than vexation of mind. Another one says better one handful than struggling to get more. And I realize that for most of us, this is not covering new territory today. This is probably a message that you haven't heard before, but I hope it is a reminder. I hope it is not just information, but begins to be a point of transformation in our lives. And in the Gospel of Luke, there's a story, a man comes to Jesus and he's asking Jesus for some help, which I think is a good thing to do. Asking Jesus for help, asking for advice. And what the man asks for is that his brother has not shared the inheritance with him. So, I don't know if in your family, or you've ever seen friends where there's a battle over the inheritance. Like, you've never seen true colors come to light faster than someone can say, I want mine. Give me mine. And this is not just a modern thing. So apparently there was inheritance that was due. One of the brothers had the inheritance. The other one wanted his portion of the inheritance. And here's Jesus' response. In Luke chapter 12, verse 15, Jesus says, watch out! Watch out! Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. Watch out. Usually when we hear the term watch out, or we use the term watch out, we're thinking of like danger, physical danger. Be careful. Or don't fall into that. Don't go there. Watch out. Jesus says that about greed. Watch out. It can get in and it wraps itself all around in your life before you are aware. And if you realize that maybe you've been traveling with too much stuff and want to let go, where do we start? Where do we start? First, I think the first thing you realize is that it's not easy. It's not easy to change our habits. It's not easy to change our desires. There was an article by the University of Chicago that talks about just how difficult it is to change our desires. And that consumerism, it becomes part of who we are. It becomes even part of our identity. And here's what the article said. I'm going to read just a couple paragraphs. I thought it was so helpful and eye-opening as I read it. I was like, yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to. It says, U.S. consumer culture is constantly engaged in the construction of signs by associating meanings with consumer goods. Whenever consumers purchase goods, they have these sign values. Economic goods are never simply objects of use. This consumption becomes consumerism when an individual purchases and displays these signs to others with the unconscious intent of procuring social recognition that grounds his or her personal significance in community. In other words, like we don't just buy a new car to get from point A to point B. We buy a new car to let everyone else know any number of things. Like, look how successful I am. Look how much money I have. Look how we live in Colorado. We have a lot of outdoor sports people, and we get a new pair of skis. And the skis aren't just for making new turns. It's for when you're sitting on the lift with the stranger and you're looking at everybody's skis and you're just kind of judging, like, all right, who's an expert skier here? Who's a mid skier? Who's not? Like, so what the article is saying is like what we buy. It's not just for the use that we buy it for. Like we're saying something about, or we're trying to say something about the things that we buy. The article goes on to say the religious nature. I thought that was interesting. The religious nature of consumerism explains its prevalence across all social classes and household types. The positional and unconscious processes behind much of today's consumption. The religious nature of consumerism also explains why consumerism is extraordinarily difficult to change. And here's what I want to key in on. Abandoning consumerism means abandoning what gives a person assurance that his or her life matters. This is only possible if the person who lives in a consumeristic culture can nevertheless secure his or her significance in a different source of meaning. In other words, our identity is tied up in our stuff, and to be free of that, we have to find our identity somewhere else. And I would suggest in someone else. Like in someone else, we have to find our identity. And the question is then what? So like getting to the root causes. Like, what am I rooting my identity in? Why do I feel like I need to spend? And so it's not going to be easy. And then I would encourage us to one handful living. Through this holidays and into the new year, to live one handful living. And here's a couple things I think that looks like. In the coming weeks, give away and throw out. This is not necessarily everybody in here, but some of us, we just got too much stuff. We have to have a storage place outside of our house and rent and pay because we don't have enough space in our house for all the stuff we have. For the first 11 years of our marriage, Laura and I had no garage. And we were just fine. No storage unit, stuff. Now we have a garage. And all of a sudden, it's like gremlins got wet and it just, stuff everywhere. Stuff just multiplied. And now some of it, to be fair to us, is church stuff. But still, like we have all this stuff. And so, are there things that you can give away? Are there things you can throw out? And I'm not just talking about decluttering, I'm talking about de-owning. Not just decluttering, de-owning. Owning less is better than organizing more. I'll say that one again. Owning less is better than organizing more. So we give away, we throw out. The second way I would encourage you to have one handful of living is just to spend less. And we're coming into Christmas, and this can be, especially for parents, or if you are buying gifts for people, this can be a challenging month. Because we want our kids to have joy and open presents and maybe experience things we didn't experience when we were kids. But give yourself permission to not go into debt for Christmas. Give yourself permission to not go into debt for Christmas. And there was no judgment from us here at the Hills Church if this Christmas and the amount of presents and the amount you spend doesn't add up to what you spent last year. That is okay. That is okay. And the idea, and it's not just those with kids that have to spend at Christmas time, but I wonder if we can get to a place that our life is so full of the goodness of God that we don't need things to help us feel better about ourselves. We don't need those things. And I don't need things to define who I am because Jesus has already defined who I am. So one handful living, it's give away, throw some stuff out, spend less, and then third, it's give more. It's give more. In general, practicing giving. And if you've been here at the Hills Church for a while, you know that we don't twist your arm into giving to the church. We don't make impassioned pleas. But giving is very much part of the discipleship process. It is part of worship, and there's something about a heart that has been experienced the generosity of God that causes us to be generous with what we have, with our time, with our finances, that what God has done in us, we begin to do for others. And it's just a self-test of where our true trust lies. Does it lie with our bank account, or does it rely with our Savior? And I've always found when it comes to generosity and how much you should give and what that should look like, C.S. Lewis was one of the great Christian thinkers of the 20th century. He wrote a book called Mere Christianity that is one of the most influential books of the last 100 years. It's written about 70 years ago now, but in it he talks about giving. And I've shared this with the church previously, but I find it fitting to share again. So he's talking, and this is 70 years ago, so some of his language is a bit antiquated, but here's what he says. He says, I do not believe one can settle how much we ought to give. I'm afraid the only safe rule is to give more than we can spare. In other words, if our expenditure on comforts, luxuries, amusements, etc. is up to the standard common among those with the same income as ours, we are probably giving away too little. So what he's saying, if you as a Jesus follower make this amount, and someone who doesn't follow Jesus makes this amount, and they're living their lifestyle at this level and spending this amount of money on themselves and going on this many trips, as a believer, your standard of living should be a little less, because what you're doing with the difference is giving. It should look different. Our faith should challenge us. He says, if our charities do not at all pinch or hamper us, I should say they are too small. There ought to be things that we should like to do and cannot do because our charitable expenditure excludes them. Better is one handful with tranquility. Better is one handful with contentment. Better is one handful with peace, with joy, with simplicity, with margin, with assurance, with confidence, with the ability to be generous. Better is one handful